Okay, hands down. You've been held up and are running late. You left late for work. And as you're driving, you come upon an accident up ahead of you that you can't help but wonder if you had been running on time, you might have been involved in that. Okay, and hands down. You've ever been fairly new into a job and your senior gets sick or injured and you just happen to be there? There's something common in these fairly different scenarios, and that's that in all of these, there's an element of being in the right place at the right time or arriving somewhere just in the nick of time in that critical moment. And sometimes we think, well, was that a coincidence or was God perhaps behind that? And so our text today features a tremendous example of that. And it comes from the book of Esther. And today we're going to be reading from the story for little ones. Esther was a beautiful woman who lived in Persia. She was one of God's people, the people of Israel. They were called Jews. The king chose Esther to be his new queen. But the king didn't know that Esther was Jewish. During this time, the king chose a man named Haman to work for him. Haman disliked the Jews. He found a way to make a law that would get rid of them. God's people were in danger. When Esther found out about the law, she knew she had to talk to the king to save God's people. Queen Esther was afraid. She prayed to God, "Please help me be brave for your people." God helped Esther come up with a plan. Esther invited the king to a big dinner. She told him to bring Haman too. At the dinner, Esther turned to the king and said, "Please don't hurt me or my people." "Who wants to hurt you?" the king asked. Esther pointed to Haman. "Haman wants to get rid of the Jews," Esther said. "I am Jewish." The king was angry with Haman and punished him. Then the king wrote a new law to keep God's people safe. The word of the Lord. So if you were to look up the book of Esther when you got home, you'd see it's a fairly short 10-chapter story, and there are some details left out in this version. But one of the most key details left out is a man named Mordecai. And Mordecai plays an incredibly important role in encouraging Esther to think about her situation differently. He helps to encourage her to use the power and the influence that she has, limited though it might be, to save her people. Esther initially seems reluctant to step out and to do something, and although she's queen, she probably didn't have nearly as much power as we might think a queen would have today. And yet Mordecai encourages her. Maybe rescue will come for our people from another place. But who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for such a time as this. Essentially, you were meant to be here. God brought you here. God has been with you each step of the way. And it's when she is reminded of who she is as one of God's chosen people and reminded that she's never been alone, that she's able to move boldly forward. Esther wisely and bravely navigates the political system, the Persian court, and God saves God's people through her actions. And God is still committed to his people on earth today. God's Spirit still moves us, still breathes through us, even in ways that we don't see and ways that we can't always understand. God is still committed to God's people. And who knows, maybe we are here in such a time as this. What profound thing does God want to work through us? While we celebrate Community of Grace's anniversary this weekend, we remember that we are part of a community that was formed in God's grace. God worked through this community. This community stepped out in faith to walk on water. Our identity is shaped by those actions and that faithfulness of God working through us over time. And it's shaped by our mission together that God has given us, inviting all generations to follow Jesus on the bold, reckless adventure of grace. Knowing that God has faithfully brought us to this point is what gives us the courage to move forward, to listen to where God is leading, and to move forward in grace. We're also always part of an even larger community than this congregation here, and we are part of that community that God has woven together. Not just this church, but the church, the body of Christ. And so we remember and proclaim our story always within the frame of that even grander story that we are a part of. And it's in remembering whose we are and remembering that the one has never left our side that we can move forward. So on this anniversary weekend, we rejoice in where we've been so that we can move forward. Thanks be to God.